Let's look at 4 types of poleaxe that you maybe didn't know about. Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. I'm going to try and keep this quick, honestly this time. So this is a late medieval or early Renaissance poleaxe, as commonly used throughout the 15th century and into the 16th century, a preferred weapon of fully armoured men-at-arms, aka knights. It's a fantastic, specialised armoured weapon that will take down armoured people as well as unarmoured people, and could be used by either. Now, you probably knew all that. You probably also know that they come in a variety of lengths and kind of formats. So sometimes we have an axe blade, sometimes we have just a hammer balanced by a spike, sometimes we have an axe balanced by a hammer, sometimes an axe balanced by a spike, and different types of top spike and different types of tail spike. Sometimes they have a handguard, sometimes they don't, and different types of langettes. So there's various different types, and there were different preferences in different regions at different times. Now, I recently revealed the not commonly known fact that the axe blades on these, and sometimes halberds as well, are blunt. Very often on museum originals, on archaeologically found originals, so a lot of originals, not just replicas, but on the originals, very often the axe blade is blunt. And if you haven't seen my video about that, I'll stick a link down below to that, so check that one out. But now, quickly, let's look at 4 types of poleaxe, which maybe you didn't know about. And first up is the short poleaxe. What on earth do I mean? Well, quite simply, most people who know what a poleaxe is, and particularly in the HEMA world, think of a poleaxe being about the same height as a person, so about 6 foot in my case. Sometimes they're a bit longer, sometimes they're a bit shorter, but what a lot of people don't know is if we look at medieval art, short poleaxes, that is pretty much sawn off about here, are actually not uncommon. They turn up in quite a lot of art, sometimes used on foot, sometimes used on horseback, sometimes used with a shield. So quite simply, there was still a need for a one-handed axe in the 15th and 16th centuries, and sometimes it seems what they did is someone just went, well, I really like this poleaxe, but actually I want a one-hander, or I want something that's kind of longsword length. And so they literally, seems that they just lopped off the bottom of the shaft. Maybe it was never put on in the first place, but you could just lop off this bit of the shaft here, and now you've got something that's more or less sword length that you can use more easily from horseback. And maybe you'll lop the top spike off in some cases as well, but fundamentally it's an adapted version of the common poleaxe. So this type of this length is definitely most common, but short poleaxes were not as uncommon as you might think if we trust the medieval art. Now, the next type of poleaxe, which you maybe didn't know about, is actually also related to certain glaives and spears out there, and that is the Crossguard Poleaxe. Well, what do I mean? Well, if you've seen Todd's Workshop and my collaborations, you might be familiar with the Crossguard Poleaxe that we encountered. There's one in the Windsor Castle collection, and there's one in the British Museum. They probably originally were part of a pair or part of a group, probably therefore tournaments, I would guess. However, they're not isolated and they're not unique. They do actually appear in art. And in fact, there's this fantastic example here from I believe it's an English manuscript, showing a form of sort of glaive poleaxe hybrid with a crossguard on it. And we find others as well. If we look at something like the Beach and Pageant manuscripts, we find forms of cutting spear, you could call it a partisan, and glaive, which also sometimes have cross guards on them. So you might be used to seeing these little disc guards, or indeed no guard at all, but some of these, believe it or not, had a cross guard like a sword. So third up weird poleaxe is the modular poleaxe. Now, anybody who knows HEMA treatises will probably know Talhofer. Maybe you've heard Talhofer mentioned on this channel or elsewhere, but in Talhofer's treatises, he shows, particularly in the 1459 version, one of the 1459 versions, he shows a modular poleaxe which is dismountable. Now, these poleaxes generally, although they are made of parts, so the hammer and the axe are one piece of metal that slides over the top of the shaft, then you have these langettes attached to the top spike which slide over the top. These langettes are separate here, and the whole thing is either screwed, bolted or riveted together. So it is sort of modular, but they're not normally designed to come apart. If we look at Talhofer's treatise from 1459, we can actually see an example which is dismountable by virtue of having screws and nuts, essentially nuts and bolts. And by taking it apart, you can put different axe heads or hammer heads on, different top spikes, even ones on the bottom it will screw out, so you can have different hooks and spikes on the bottom. So literally you could have, almost like the Kurgan from Highlander, you could have a big briefcase you open up with all your optional poleaxe parts. I have to get this made one day. Any volunteers out there, get in contact. You open up all your optional parts and you think, I'm fighting Gunther today in the judicial duel. I think I will have the hook on the bottom, I will have the long spike on the top, the axe blade and the spike on the back. I don't know what accent that was supposed to be. Please forgive me, I'm very excited because it's poleaxes, and any regular viewers of my channel will always know that I get excited about poleaxes. So there we go, the modular poleaxe. Do I think it was a real thing, or do I just think it was in Talhoffer's fevered dreams? We might never know, but we might find one. I actually think, given how many weird and wacky weapons people like Todd and I do turn up in museum collections, I actually think it was probably real. And at some point, somebody probably made something like this. So the fourth and final example of a weird and wacky poleaxe that you might not know about. Students of Fiore di Liberi will know about this. Or actually, I would hope they do, but actually I have encountered some who don't know about it, because it is in one particular plate of the Getty manuscript. There are 4 surviving versions of Fiore di Liberi's treatise, and in that he has a poleaxe with a hollow head. Okay, why would you have a hollow head? Because it's filled with pepper spray. That's right. So this amazing invention, and he's dedicating his book to the Marquis of Ferrara, Niccolo d'Este III, I think it is, and he basically says, look, you're a noble lord, you'd surely never do this, but just for your interest, just so you know, here's something you can do. You make a hollow-headed poleaxe, you fill it full of this concoction, and he gives the recipe. I don't recommend you go and make this. I actually looked into the ingredients. Sunspurge is one of the ingredients. It's from a flower, and it can cause permanent blindness. So this isn't just pepper spray to make you go, oh, I'm a bit itchy in the eye. This causes permanent blindness, people. And how does it work? Quite simply, you fill the kind of paste powder type stuff inside the hollow head. It's got holes so it can come out. And what you do is you come up to fight with your opponent. You probably jab at them a little bit. And then at some point, when you get a clear shot towards the visor slits of their helmet, because you're fighting in armour, you take a big old swing at their head, which they hopefully block. And when they block, the inertia of the powder inside flies out of the axe head through the slits of their visor and blinds them for life, or possibly temporarily, but long enough for you to jump on them, pull them on the ground while they're going, my eyes, and stab them repeatedly with a rondel dagger through the wherever, a gap you can find in their armour. Anyway, I hope that's been interesting. Did you know about all these 4 weird and wacky and unusual poleaxes? Let me know down below. Did you know about 1 or 2, 3, or did you know all of them, or were they all new to you? I'll be really interested to find out. You take care of yourselves. I have been Matt Easton. I'll continue to be. And if you've got any other particular requests, particular types of medieval, Renaissance, post-Renaissance weapons that you'd like me to treat in this way, and maybe look at some unusual variants of, then let me know down in the comments below. I hope we see you back on the channel really soon. Cheers, folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers, folks.